I am live. I continue reading Reshad Feilds' book, The Last Barrier, a Sufi journey. I'm in chapter 1. It's only just started, and my connection wasn't very good. I hope it's better today. This is about Reshad, and he is one autumn making his rounds in London's antique shops, and he enters this shop, and there is this extraordinary man. The atmosphere in the shop changed straight away. "Please excuse me," I stammered. "You must think me very ill-mannered." "Not at all," he replied. He was smiling now. "Nothing ever happens by chance, does it? Strangely enough, I too am very interested in the dervishes." He stared piercingly at me over the top of his glasses. "It is also time to close, and I have some time to spare. Why don't you come and have coffee with me, and we can talk about these things a little?" I do not remember leaving the shop, nor walking up the street to find a place to have coffee. The whole situation was having a strange effect on me. I was experiencing a very deep fear for no reason that I could understand at the time, as though I were just entering a world that was entirely new to me, and although part of me wished that I were somewhere else, there was another part of me that was holding me in a situation that eventually was to change the whole course of my life. After we sat down and had ordered coffee, he introduced himself, telling me that his name was Hamid, that he originally came from Turkey, and that he had been living in England for about 2.5 years. He skirted around a subject that so fascinated me, but did give me some information about the dervishes in Turkey. He told me that Ataturk, the first president, had banned them because their power, even in politics, had become too great. Hamid also indicated that there were still people in Turkey who knew of their ways. In fact, the conversation, although very light, became more a period of questioning than anything else. I felt as though I was being very carefully analyzed. I began to be more and more uncomfortable. "But I'm very curious to know how you came to be so interested in these things," he said at last, as we stood up to leave the cafe. "Perhaps you would like to come and have dinner with me in my apartment tomorrow evening, and then we can talk further. Do you mind what you eat?" Rather apologetically, I explained that I had been a vegetarian for some years, but that I did not want to put him to any trouble. "That's fine," he said. "In fact, here is another coincidence. I've just written a book on vegetarian dishes of the Middle East, so I will prepare something special for you. Come round tomorrow evening at 7:30. With that, he turned and disappeared into the crowd. For a moment I stood looking down the street after him, and then returned to my apartment, where I lived alone, as my wife and I had separated some time before. I do not think that I slept more than a few hours that night. My mind was racing, trying to fit together all that had transpired that day. During the next year I spent as much time as possible with Hamid. We would sit for hours in his shop, and little by little, and so subtly, he introduced me into the way of the Sufis, those who follow the mystic path of Islam. I became his pupil, avidly collecting as much information as I could. But for some reason I did not understand, he would not talk to me about the particular subject that most fascinated me, namely the healing arts. When questions about it, he would just skirt around the subject, saying that he was sure I was as sensitive and therefore would know what to do at the right time, and that was enough for them. "Keep to the straight way," he would say. "Do not get deviated. Always question your motives for pursuing these subjects. It is a dangerous game, and it is necessary that you have a good foundation of real knowledge, otherwise you might get blown over. About once a week I would go to his apartment for dinner. If he was still preparing the meal when I arrived, he would insist that I sit in silence until he had finished. He always worked with such concentration and arranged the food so beautifully that it was as though each meal was the most important he had ever cooked. He never questioned me about being a vegetarian until one day he looked up from the salad that he was arranging and asked, "Why are you a vegetarian?" I went into a long discourse about the merits of vegetarianism and its relation to the spiritual life, until finally he interrupted me. "Good," he said, "but I'm not a vegetarian. Do you know why?" I shook my head. He smiled. "I'm not a vegetarian because I know that God is perfect, and therefore everything has its place in the universe. I'm not criticizing you," he added, "but the further you proceed along the path, the more you must be able to transmute everything that comes your way. One day we will talk further about this." That year passed quickly. Our relationship grew in depth, and it was not long before Hamid attended all the various lectures I was giving at that time. Mostly I gave talks on healing and what is called the subtle body of man, which can be seen or felt by those who have sufficiently developed their sensitivity. At that time, the world was waking up to the possibility of a new way of life, and discussions of related subjects drew large crowds, particularly young people. Besides the lectures and giving weekend workshops, I was involved with a group studying various forms of meditation from the East and the West, which could be used in psychotherapy, and the group had grown very large. Hamid would come to the meetings, and always in the same way. He would arrive just before I started, then leave just before the end, so that no one might notice him. He asked that our relationship be kept quiet for the time being. The following day he would go over the events of the previous evening in great detail. Although he had said that he knew nothing about healing, it was becoming increasingly apparent from his remarks that he knew much more than he was prepared to talk about. Then an event occurred that changed the course of our relationship. One day I received a letter from an old school acquaintance wondering if I might be able to help a close friend of his. This man and his wife had suffered severe problems for several years. The wife had been hospitalized for a time and had finally left him. Since then he had suffered from appalling spells of depression, verging on suicide, and would often lock himself into his room for days on end. Neither his doctor nor the other types of healers he had consulted had been able to help him. I had never had such a case before, and I was having dinner with Hamid that evening. I told him about it and showed him the letter. To my surprise, he was very much interested and said that he would like to meet the sick man. "May I come with you?" he asked. "Of course," I said, "but I don't know what on earth I'm going to do." "If you would like, I will help," he announced, pouring the coffee. "You would do that?" I said, startled. He turned to me smiling. "I said that I would help you if you like. I do know a little about these things, but until now the time has not been right to talk with you about them." "In all this time, why didn't you tell me you knew something about healing?" I asked, baffled. "You were doing quite well on your own. There was no need, and anyway, I was interested in observing the way your mind was working. Now, if you like, we will meet here the day after tomorrow at 11 in the morning. I will shut the shop for the day, and perhaps you can also get the day off. Tonight, you should contact the man and say that we will come, and that he must buy a fresh white egg." "Hamid, I really don't understand what you want him to do." He he must buy a good white egg, and he must keep it with him continuously for 24 hours before we see him. He should hold it as much as possible, and at night he should put it beside his bed on a small table, as close to his head as he can without danger of breaking it. Is that quite clear? Don't worry, we won't hurt him. Now go and call him. You may do it from here, if you like. I wondered what the response of the man on the other end of the telephone would be, but to my surprise, he had no reaction to my instructions. He said that he would get the egg the next day and would look forward to seeing us. He also mentioned that at that particular moment, he was better than he had been for a long time. 2 days later, when I arrived at Hamid's apartment, he was wearing his best suit. His hair was still wet from the shower, and he was holding an empty paper bag, which he handed to me, with instructions to keep it for him. What is it for? I asked. It's for the egg, he replied. We will take it away with us when we leave. Will you tell me what you are going to do with it? I asked. Wait and see, he said, getting into the car. We drove in silence across Hyde Park toward Hampstead, where the man lived. As we drove through the centre of London, past Kensington Gardens, the idea of this man sitting and waiting for us, holding an egg, struck me as so improbable that I began to chuckle. What's so funny? Hamid asked. Do you not want this man to be better? Of course I do, I replied. Then be serious, for heaven's sake. This is a very difficult business. We drove in silence the rest of the way. Our destination turned out to be a small but beautiful Regency house on a peaceful terrace high up on Hampstead Hill. Hamid's mood was strange. I had never seen him like this before. His eyes were half closed, his lips moving quietly as though he were talking to himself, or perhaps praying. As soon as I stopped the car, he opened the door and got out. By the time I had locked the car and hurried after him, he had already gone into the house. We were greeted by a man of slight build, who introduced himself as Malcolm. With many nervous gestures, he ushered us into the living room and offered tea, which Hamid accepted. As he left the room, Hamid turned to me and said, Well, where is it? I glanced around involuntarily. Where is what, Hamid? He seemed suddenly angry. You are the sensitive. You should know. Something is very wrong in this house. Go and find it. But Hamid, I protested, I can't just go looking around the house without his permission. Do as I tell you. Go upstairs and find out what's wrong. At that point, I felt less uncomfortable about roaming uninvited through the house than about disobeying Hamid. I had no idea what I was looking for, but there had been so much force behind Hamid's order that I reached the top of the stairs before I had time to question what I was doing. 4 closed doors faced me on the second floor. The first 2 were to bedrooms, then a bath. The 4th room, however, was different. It was a studio. It was in the dark. I could just make out a large painting in the middle of the room. As I turned from drawing open the window curtains, I felt a tremendous shock. The painting on the easel was almost 7 feet tall, but its narrowness gave the illusion of even greater height. It depicted an enormous horse's skull and backbone rising from a motionless expanse of water. The backbone seemed transparent, translucent, as though consumed by pale fire, while the skull was suffused from within by a lurid red glow. As I examined the painting, I became aware of tiny flames licking in and out of the vertebrae and the jaw. The sense of macabre evil about the painting was overwhelming. I shut the door quietly and went quickly down the stairs. Tea had been brought, and the 2 were talking to one another. You found the bathroom all right? Hamid asked me. Yes, I said, not knowing what else to reply. Hamid turned to Malcolm and asked if he might have some brown sugar for his tea. As the man disappeared once more into the kitchen, Hamid asked me, Well, what was it? As carefully as I could, I told him. He seemed pleased or possibly relieved. Thank you, he said. Now we can proceed. When Malcolm returned with the sugar, Hamid began immediately. You have the egg my friend asked you to buy. Give it to me, please. Malcolm brought out the egg carefully from his jacket pocket and handed it to Hamid. Momentarily, Hamid held it, weighing it carefully in his hands. Then, calling for a pen, he began to write all over the egg in Arabic. Not a word was spoken during this time. When the shell of the egg was completely covered, Hamid turned and looked sternly at Malcolm. You have made a very serious mistake, he began. Through misuse of sexual energy, you have exposed yourself to great evil. I am told that this is the third time that you have asked for help. Is that correct? What do you mean? I mean that twice before you have been to those who know about these things, but you did not obey their instructions, and therefore you did not improve. Is this not so? Malcolm looked very ashamed, explained that indeed it was true that on 2 occasions before he had been to healers. But that they had asked him to do certain things which he felt he could not carry out. What did they do to help you? Hamid asked. They gave me special herbs and teas mainly, he replied. But did they not forbid you to eat red meat for 40 days? And did they not tell you that you must not touch alcohol during that period? Malcolm looked stubborn and bewildered. How did you know that? He asked. It is in the egg, Hamid replied. All information is in the egg, is it not? Now, since you have asked for help, will you accept my treatment unconditionally? Malcolm nodded. Then get a towel and put it around your neck, Hamid said. I'm going to break this egg on your forehead. A shocked silence followed. Neither Malcolm nor I moved for a few moments, and then Hamid once again ordered him to get a towel. When he returned, Malcolm seemed seemed desolate and somehow smaller than when he had left the room. The atmosphere was so tense that even Hamid was trembling slightly, his forehead covered with fine beads of perspiration. Before I do this, he said, you must promise to burn the picture upstairs, and you must also promise not to eat meat for 40 days and 40 nights, and to drink no alcohol during this period. If you fail this time, there will be no other chance. Is that quite clear? Malcolm nodded sadly. But why burn the picture, he asked. It is the best painting I have ever done. It may be a good picture, but it does not come from good. My friend has already told me of it. You must excuse us. I sent him upstairs to find out the source of what I could feel in this house. Hamid rose to his feet. I could see Malcolm with his head slightly bent and his eyes closed just beneath the level of Hamid's left elbow. For a moment I wished that I had never become involved with Hamid at all. Then Hamid took 2 steps forward, raised his hand containing the egg, and brought it down with great force onto Malcolm's forehead, the egg bursting just above his eyebrows. It seemed literally to explode. The yolk and the white bounced off his nose and landed in a dirty yellow heap on his lap. Give me the paper bag, please, Hamid ordered. He took the bag in his left hand and carefully scraped the mess into it. Then, having examined Malcolm to see if there were any more pieces of shell sticking to him, he handed the paper bag to me. Finally, he took the towel from Malcolm and with great tenderness carefully wiped his face. All right, he said, it is done. I'm sorry to have messed up your suit, but the cleaners will take care of it. Come on now, open your eyes. Hamid was smiling, and the whole feeling of the room had changed. There was a new lightness in the air, and I noticed the sun streaming through the window onto the sofa where we had been sitting. Now remember, do as you have been told, for you will not be given another chance. Come, he said, turning to me. Bring the bag. We must go. He told me to drive to the southern part of London, to where the Thames cuts its way through the city. He was in a very jovial mood, telling jokes about his early days in Turkey, as though nothing had happened. At last I asked him to explain. "There is nothing to explain," he said. "It is too early for you to learn about these things yet. One day, though, if you wish, we may talk a little more." "But the egg just seemed to explode," I said, "and then all the yolk and the white landed on that one place. It isn't logical." Hamid roared with laughter. "I told you," he said, "that the egg contained all the secrets that he wished to know, that we wished to know." Still, I was not satisfied. I had witnessed an incredible, powerful scene, but somehow the situation lacked resolution. I had been a professional healer for over 5 years, but I had never seen anything with the depth and power of what Hamid had done today. It was a difference, not only of degree, but of kind. Finally, I asked him, "Is the man really cured? Will he regain his health now?" Hamid glanced at me gravely. "That depends entirely on him," he said. "We have given him everything he needs to recover completely, but we cannot force him to accept it. All we can do now is to offer our prayers." We parked the car by the Thames embankment. Hamid hurried across the pavement, and I followed him as quickly as I could. He had the paper bag in his hand, and as he threw it out over the water, anyone passing by would have thought that he was feeding the seagulls. He silently watched the bag sink in the dirty water, and then turned back to the car. "Come along to my apartment," he said. "We haven't had lunch yet, and I'm hungry." Over the meal, he passed on certain instructions that I was to carry out, telling me exactly how to deal with Malcolm. Over the next 40 days, he refused to go into the method he had used, and would not tell me why he had found it necessary to break an egg on Malcolm's head. It was such an unlikely thing for Hamid to have done, frowning as he did on all things that had any relationship to magic. Then he gave me another shock. "Tomorrow I'm leaving for Istanbul. By early January, you can find me in the southern part of Anatolia. If you come properly and at the right time, I will receive you. But you must come alone and leave behind all that is past. If you want to follow the way, you must leave everything behind. There must be no loose ends, no dirty laundry in the closet, no bills unpaid. There must be nothing to hold you from coming with both hands open. So far, all our work together has just been preparation for this moment. Now, it is up to you to take the next step, which is a step completely into the unknown." And I finish this chapter here and continue soonest. Bye.